stakeholder meetings on the proposed rule changes for WAC 16202 that has to do with chemigation and fertigation. My name is Caleb Cole. I'm the regulatory lead for the AES division of WSDA. In this agenda, we'll go over the major changes to the rule, some minor changes to the rule. The major changes being the combination, chemigation, and fertigation rules, the removal of the certification rule, new monitoring options, and new enforcement rules. The major changes are the combination of the chemigation and fertigation rules. They were that are identical. We put those together, and then we allow for remote monitoring of chemigation and fertigation. That's one of the major changes that came to us from industry. We're going to eliminate the reference to a defunct training certificate that we no longer offer. And then we're going to add a standard enforcement mechanism, notice corrections and stop use orders, because currently in the chapter there's only court actions that are allowed. The minor changes to rule are spelling and grammar changes. We also renumbered of subsections for clarity. After combination, if chemigation and fertigation had slightly different rules, we made a distinction in the language to break those apart. During the last series of meetings, we didn't have any feedback at all about those changes, the minor changes, so I'm not going to go over them again. So this meeting should go a lot faster. We're just going to hit the major changes and wait for feedback on those. Then there's deletion and repeal. The original layout of the chapter had a separate, almost identical version for fertigation after the chemigation. The new chapter layout eliminates the almost identical second part for fertigation, incorporates them into chemigation, and that will allow for us to delete about 30 pages of regulations, which will help everybody as far as clarity goes. This is one of the major changes, although not that major because it doesn't happen. We used to offer a certificate that would allow someone to do chemigation without being a certified applicator. We haven't offered that certificate in years. Our only way to do it is to become a certified applicator, so that is the only way to perform a chemigation. So we're going to be removing that from the new chapter. The major one that came from industry is the chemigation monitoring. We're going to add a subsection 3 to that one. And after feedback from the first round of stakeholder meetings, it became aware that what we were asking for really didn't match up with what was in the old language and what would normally be required if you were on site. So we've reworded it, worked it down with some of the feedback, and this is the new proposed language. A chemigation monitoring system has to automatically notify the certified applicator at least once every 4 hours or more frequently as required by the label, location, or product characteristics of the pesticide flow rate. Flow rate there, we're leaving intentionally vague so it can refer to either monitoring of the PSI of the injected product or some volumetric flow rate. So as long as the system can communicate that to the applicator at least once every 4 hours remotely, they don't have to go out and check it visually. They just have to get that telemetry remotely. Criteria 2 has to automatically notify the certified applicator in the event of any power failure, equipment shutdown, or other fault affecting the chemigation. It came up during our last meetings that chemigation systems are designed to shut down if there is a fault. And so if they lose flow rate, if they lose pressure, they're made to automatically adjust and then shut down if they can't correct it. So all the rules we had in there to spell this out were redundant and meaningless. So all we need to have is the system to be able to shut itself down and notify the certified applicator when it does it. So that's the main rule. Plus visual inspection, if you were to go out every 4 hours, you would only know if it had been shut down. So further information wouldn't really comport with the rest of the requirements. And the third criteria allows the certified applicator to shut down the chemigation equipment from their location. And this is so regardless of if it's running correctly or if there's been an issue, if it comes to the certified applicator's attention that something else is going wrong, they can shut it down regardless of anything else. So if they get a complaint from a neighbor, or if an employee or a supervisor on site says, hey, something's gone wrong, or the weather changes and they find out, they can shut it down just like they'd be able to if they were there physically. And those are the only three criteria that now exist. Fertigation monitoring, it's the same requirements, except instead of every 4 hours, fertigation is required to be monitored every 24 hours. So that's the main change here. The first criteria automatically notifies the operator at least once every 24 hours or more frequently as required by the product characteristics of the fertilizer flow rate. Same thing. This is to make sure, just like pesticides, they know that it's still operating as a fertigation operation. 2, automatically notifies the operator in the event of any power failure, equipment shutdown, or other fault affecting the fertigation. So again, just like the other one, if the fertigation application shuts itself down because of a failure or a fault, it notifies the certified applicator. And the final criteria for fertigation monitoring allows the operator to shut down the fertigation equipment from their location. Same as with chemigation, if they find out from someone or if they notice something in the weather, they can shut it down from their location, regardless of where they're at. The new enforcement rules are made to give all parties a little more leeway in what happens. The current rules allow for the department to bring a court action, which is our first and only option in the current rules. What the new rules will do is give us an opportunity to kind of have escalating and ways to correct it without having to go straight to that. So the first subsection will be, we can choose not to pursue a civil penalty, license suspension, license revocation, or court action. Like any other chapter we have, we are not required to take an action, and this is just spells that out. Subsection 2, the issuance of a notice of correction in lieu of pursuing a civil penalty, license suspension, or license revocation. This means that if we find something that can be easily fixed or may take time to fix, we can issue a note of correction. And that's just it's a non-enforcement action. It's basically a warning letter that we send out. People are probably very familiar with notice of corrections. It's just, we tell you what's wrong, how it needs to be fixed, and then gives you a time frame on when it needs to be fixed by. Escalating from that, we can issue a stop use order, direct the operator to discontinue any violation of the chapter and take such affirmative action as is necessary to comply with the chapter. This would be between maybe a notice of correction and a notice of intent. So this would come after maybe a notice of correction, but before any type of civil penalty or licensing action. This just gives us another tool to shut things down officially should there be an issue. And again, you would really gives us more leeway in how we can correct these and get things back into compliance. And then finally, there's nothing in here that says we can't refer violations or alleged violations to the federal, state, or county authority with jurisdiction over the activities in question. This would be the EPA, Department of Ecology, and Department of Health. And depending on which things that might happen is whose jurisdiction it might fall into, or other criminal prosecutors, this would be the last thing we'd want to do. And it would be once things got out of our jurisdiction into someone else's. And the previous corrections are made to ensure that it doesn't get out of our jurisdiction. We can fix things before it becomes a bigger problem. Any questions? Seeing as there's no questions, I will go ahead and end this. Thanks for coming by, and I appreciate your joining this meeting.
Thank you, Caleb.